exciting when there's nobody around that you know who knows what you're talking about. So anyway, so I'm going to warn you, I am crossing my fingers that my country internet is gonna be good tonight. So far I'm keeping I'm going to turn, well, actually I'll leave my camera on. That helps people sometimes, but I'm going to hope that this all goes well, and we'll just jump right into client first.
Mm-hmm.
Go, Penny, go. Go, Penny, go.
Yeah, okay, let's just all be, I'm really glad that not all the people that RSVP'd are here. I'll be honest with you. And sharing. All right, there we go. Okay, so let's get this to load up. All righty, so the client first style system from Finsweet. What we're going to cover tonight is what client first is, why you should use it, how does it work, how to get started, and I'm going to try and do a little demonstration. We're all going to be really, really supportive as I do that. But first, let's talk about who Finsweet is. If you don't know, Joe Krug founded Finsweet about 5 years ago. He's just sort of done amazing things, and he'll actually be speaking tomorrow at No Code Conf, talking about how he and the company have built such a great agency in a short period of time. HelloSign, Dropbox, Intuit have been clients. He decided to keep working with and for the community instead of selling out, which was pretty exciting. Cms Library, a lot of people have been using for creating filters and making their sites work better. The Noble Airtable app connects Airtable and Webflow so that you can actually sync back and forth. And in the summer, they released the Finsweet Chrome extension, which I don't even know how many people you guys said are using it now, but an awful lot. It allows you to reorder colors in your color picker, remove styles, do all sorts of things that you can't do otherwise natively in Webflow. And most recently, they released not most recently. Recently, they released the client first style system. And today, the Cms Attributes, which is the rebuild of the Cms library, is now available, so that all the things you could do before in Cms library, you now do through Attributes. And I haven't explored that yet at all, but it's going to be yet another game changer. So Finsweet, all of these things have been free. They promised that one day they'll charge us for something, but in the meantime, it's an amazing resource that they create for the community. And there's some more. I'll be providing the PDF of this presentation later, so you can click links if you like. All right, so does this look familiar? Anybody seen any of these before in their own builds, like, text block 48 or column 15, right? I was actually surprised at how few of these I found, because I was pretty sure that I had really bad naming system, and it actually turned out because I'd been using some templates, I hadn't messed my old sites up as much as I thought I had. But I did find some evidence of bad naming. And if we look at, when you look at source code, right? The one on the left is Bootstrap. If you don't know it, the one on the right is Foundation, which is what I used for a long time. And about the time that Grid came in, by that point, I had a developer that was building for me. So I never really had to learn all this stuff. And it's just like when you're hand coding, to remember all this stuff is pretty tiresome. So Webflow really makes life so much easier. And Finsweet came to our rescue to make all of those things a little easier. So now, if you look at the item on the left, you can see that it all makes much more sense, right? You can see what's going on. You can see that this whole section is related to home services. We see home services repeated all the way through. And you can see how much nicer and cleaner your styles are. And when you're looking at your source code, you can actually see all of the items within a component, and they all make sense and they all relate together. And that's basically what the client-first Webflow style system does. Is it allows us to create a class naming convention that works for us. It's guidelines and strategies, but it isn't hard and fast rules. So it's really about what works for your site within the strategy that they have laid out. It's logical. It includes global styles that are already within the system that make life so much easier for the basic things that we use all the time, every day. But it's designed to simplify the naming of your custom classes and your components so that you can understand them. Well, actually, so that other people that you're working with can understand them. Marketers could understand them that are working with you, but even your clients. So when they look at, if you hand over sites to people, they could actually understand when they look at it what you've put into the site, as opposed to a lot of abbreviations. I've used System Flow, and there's so many abbreviations, even I couldn't, again, remember what they were. But even more than all of that, when you come back to a site you haven't worked on in a while, you'll know what it all means. And that's the pretty exciting part, especially when you work alone. So why would you want to use Client First? Because it provides a strategy for meaningful class names. Basically, what does this class do? You give it a name that makes sense, and then that cascades through each section of the site. You decide what you want to name things based on what your site needs, and you don't have all those crazy abbreviations to remember. So, for some reason, oops, okay. So, oops, let me just go back one here. Yes, okay, just wanted to make sure.
Question about that.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, so that last slide where it says you don't have to remember all the crazy abbreviations. What's the context around those abbreviations? Because none of them are familiar to me from like a non-programming background.
Okay, so so things like call-sm-12 would have been the size, the class name for a column width, that would be a 12 columns grid on a small size screen. So if you wanted to have the full width of the screen taken up by a div, you would give it a call SM12, and that would be a full width on, but that you'd also have call medium 12 and call. It was just insane, just the number of different, the way the whole grid system worked, all the classes you had to have for all of that. Same thing with grid X, grid margin X. It's, you still have to provide all of that information to through Webflow for the class naming, because it's still CSS. It just ideally makes a little bit more sense. And then System Flow has this whole color naming system that just gets a little overwhelming as well.
Those are the naming conventions for Bootstrap Foundation and System Flow. The class, they're just examples of those of the kinds of class names you would have seen. Okay. Oh, and grid X goes horizontally, grid Y goes vertically. So then you got to remember which is X and which is Y. And think back to math class and X and Y axes, and okay. So Client First is basically prefixes and keywords. So we have a prefix, say text, because we're going to be talking about some text classes here, and then you would add weight. So all of the classes that relate to weight would be text, weight, light, medium, bold, whatever. Text size, small, medium, large, etc. Text color, and then you might add text color blue.
And so now everywhere you use text color blue, you get the color that you've assigned to text color blue. And then you want to change to a different shade of blue because the client said, nah, that wasn't quite right. Now everything that's text color blue gets changed when you change the color that's assigned to this class. You take that idea and you use that to build components and sections within your website. So you might have a testimonial slider, which is the section that it's sort of like the overall name of this section. And then you add to that the class names for the divs that are inside that testimonial slider. So headshot wrapper, testimonial slider, headshot image, company text, divider line, all of the secondary items fit within the testimonial slider. But you know that you don't have to decide, once you've decided this is called testimonial slider, you don't have to decide what you're going to call the headshot wrapper. You're just going to call it testimonial slider, headshot wrapper, headshot image. So you can see that they make sense and you can understand what's going to be inside this item. So then reasons why we might use something like that kind of a naming system is that when you're working in the selector box to find styles that you've already created, they actually, because everything starts with the same prefix, they all show up alphabetically, and then you can very easily see what you need by starting to type the word. And so then you're not trying to find the one that you want within this huge long list of things, because if it said component insurance and then it was item insurance, they'd be all over the place. But this way they end up all nicely lined up. And when you're looking at your navigator panel, you got the same thing where you can see very clearly that these items are all part of the same section of the website. So the other thing the client first gives us is some pre-written classes. So those basically define the page structure that you use all consistently through all the sites and all the builds that you do. It gives us global classes and it allows for site-wide changes. So if you decide that, you know, the width that's provided in a particular global class isn't wide enough for the screen, or you want to change it, you make the change on that one global class. Because you use that global class everywhere, now the whole site has been updated. So again, you can see the sort of the approach of using the same naming system consistently throughout the site. It gives you that sense of, you feel confident as you're working with it that you understand what all of these things do. So the one thing I didn't point out earlier when we started talking about prefixes is that the prefix begins with the word that describes that section, and then there is an underscore, and then component is always the first item that you have within your component. And then after that, everything has the underscore and then that keyword that goes along with it. And that way you always know that the prefix at the beginning with the underscore means that all of those things always fit together. And we are always admonished, never leave a nameless div. So you don't get this div block 1. Even if you have something that doesn't really need a style, give it a style name, even if you're not going to do anything with it, just so that it's not just sort of sitting there as an empty div block. Or not that it's not an empty div block, it might be an empty div block, but that it does at least have a name. All right, so talking about components, have I lost everybody? Because I can't see you right now. So
oh, you're doing great. You're doing absolutely great.
Great, excellent.
This is good.
Good, excellent. So I have to say, big thanks to Finsweet for the amazing documentation, because this is all coming straight out of that. If you're getting anything out of this, it's because of all the work that the Finsweet folks have done. So as I pointed out before, component name with the underscore, and then all of the the keywords that you add after that prefix. And then say you've got a button, you don't just stick in button necessarily. You might add especially if you style it specifically for to go into a component, you would then follow up in that same convention by giving it its own name within the component structure. So just again, a few more examples of how that gets used. And again, you can see how easy it is to understand once you start using it. So part of what they've created in this is a structure that you use all the time. We have a page wrapper, which basically wraps up the entire page. Everything that's in the site is within a page, is within that one page wrapper, which means you can close that up and copy it and take it to another page and paste it in, and everything is there. Makes it really simple to do that. Now, of course, we can do that with any section within it, but if you want to basically take a whole page and copy it and put it on another page to then make changes to that layout on a new page, you can do that really simply. Then your nav component, which is kept outside of the rest of the area. So everything else is inside the main wrapper section. And then within that, then there are sections created for each part of the site within the main wrapper. So what the sections do is basically let you find easily the area that you're going to. And rather than just calling it a section, which Webflow would do automatically if you just call it a section, you actually give it a name for that section. So if we were working on the testimonial testimonial slider, it would be section testimonial slider, and then we would have our component. But before we do that, we have a bit of padding, and it'll make a little more sense when we get to the demonstration. But the padding basically keeps you from taking your content right out to the very edges of your viewport. Keep it in a little bit. Not so much of a big deal on a desktop unless you've gone full width, but on smaller screens, you want to make sure your content doesn't go right out to the edges of the viewport. So the page padding looks after that for you, and you never have to worry about it again within that section. Then you have a container, and within that container, you then build your components. And then you just repeat that until you get to the end of the page where you have your footer component. All right, so that's structure. Typography, again, these are part of the global classes that are provided for us. Heading sizes, we'll talk about the font sizes. We'll talk about rems in a moment, but you've got lots of options for heading sizes already built in, and they're all I'm going to pause there before I go on because I'll get confusing here. But that's already built in for you, so you don't have to go and decide what things should, how you're going to name all of your basic items. They're all already there for you. And they've created spacing. So a spacing system. We have various sizes of margins. And they've already set up desktop versions, tablet, mobile, and portrait, mobile landscape and portrait. And the same thing with the padding. This is just a tiny little bit of what's available. I just took a little screenshot of some of the material there, but there's like lots and lots of classes already set up. And again, they just always make sense because there's consistency across every element there. And then there are some global classes for responsive visibility. So you can hide everything. You can hide certain things on a tablet. You could hide something just on mobile or something on mobile portrait. So it just makes it easy. You don't have to actually go in and create a class to do all of that. You can just add one of these global classes, and that's already set up for you. You don't have to go and hide things and then whatnot. You can just add it to a section and it's gone. Same thing with showing things. And then we have max widths. So we have, we can take a container and then we can add a max width to it. And that way, when at different sizes, a container won't be any larger than what you've set. But the other thing you can do is, if you have an item that you actually, if you've got a container in the center of your screen, and then suddenly you want something that breaks out of it, you can just add a max width full and it'll break through all of everything else, and without having to do an awful lot of other messing around. So the fact that all of this stuff's already set up for us just makes working in the system so much easier. And they've given us some icon classes as well that are already pre-sized. So again, just makes building quicker. All right, so looking at components. There are no components. Whatever you need, you create. So in some systems, it'll be like, here's a bunch of components, just grab this component and stick it in. And that's fine, but what Client First does is it doesn't sort of restrict you. It's like, okay, however you need to design this, you can, just within the naming framework. And layouts, again, whatever you need, whatever, the limit of your imagination. So the last thing I think is sizes. Client First is based on a 4-point system using REMS. REM is basically a sizing system that sizes text and any kind of element relative to the font size of the root. So essentially what we do is we say HTML is equal to 16 pixel font. And then after that, it's all multiples of 16 or divide by 4. So 4 pixels is 0.25 rems. 16 pixels is 1 rem. 20 pixels is 1.25, et cetera, et cetera. And what's great is there is a calculator. It's right from the docs. You can go right to the calculator. You can put in the size of you can put in your pixel size and it'll tell you what rems you need to set up. But you start getting used to rems. I used to use rems with foundations, so it was nice to come back to them. Rems really became important back when certain browsers didn't respond to resizing pixels properly for accessibility. So, but it makes the math so much easier when you're using rems. All right. So how do you get started with Client First? If you haven't worked with it before, you're in luck because there's lots of resources. There's a website, which has a pile of documentation. It's the documentation is amazing. I think somebody in the Gather space today was saying just how helpful the documentation was for and for everything that Finsweet does. The documentation is brilliant, and there's always videos, and everything is explained really well. There are some more resources like live builds. One of the things that Finsweet did when they introduced Client First was they had several live streams where Harshit, who is one of the Finsweet guys, was on No Code Conf in the Speed Build Challenge today. He was actually building using Client First in the live stream, and basically sort of rebuilding a site he would find online and sort of just build it all out in an hour on the live stream. So you can watch those and see them see how it all comes together. There are wireframes if you just want to start from a wireframe. I've been doing that with the current site, and it's made life like infinitely better. It does include a few components already built. And there are some clonables that have Figma files. You can actually go through the whole process of taking the Figma file, adapting it for your design, and then working with the clonable to create, to basically take that design and build it out in client first. And it's already partially done for you. It's a great way to learn client first in the first place before you actually start trying to build with it from scratch. And check out Finsweet on YouTube. All of the videos are there, but they're always also linked from all of the other pages as well. And join the community on Slack. If you haven't been to a Finsweet growth presentation on Tuesday afternoons at noon Eastern, there's a live stream where Joe and Reimar, who's with us today, present a topic that the community has voted on. They've been talking, and it's more around growth of your agency or growth of you as a designer, a builder. And the chat is always great on that, and they answer questions, and it's a really great way to be part of the community, but also to learn a lot more about how to run a business well. And then join the community on the Slack channel, and from there you can get the link to go into the gather space and hang out with folks during events like today with No Code Conf. All right, so how are we doing for time, guys?
Do you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, okay, well, I've been blithering on here, but we're going to give this a shot because and we'll see what happens. All right, so I'm going to stop this presentation and I'm going to go to here. All right, so here's what I'm thinking we're going to do. This is actually a section from one of the clonables. And so I thought I'd, try and not embarrass myself too much here and build this. I'm going to keep this up here so that I remember what it is I'm building. Before I do that, I'm just going to point out, if you've used Webflow, but you always use the standard Navbar that comes with Webflow, the Navbar is great because it gives you a place for your logo, and it gives you the navigation, and it's already got mobile navigation set up in it, but it is inside a container that is restricted to 960 pixels because that's how Webflow set it up in the first place. So the first thing that most everybody does nowadays is they get rid of this container, and they basically just create a nav. So they create a div bar or a div, and then they move all of the nav items, the brand and the nav menu and the menu bar or menu button into their own container, so that that you can then get rid of this old 960 container. So I'm just going to get rid of that and make that go away.
Quick question here. Why can't we apply the container class instead of just replacing it with the div? So a class will have the same styles, right?
Well, you have to, but the thing is that the Webflow container size is actually in the Webflow code. It's you have to actually add custom code to override that. So rather than doing that, the sort of standard way that most people deal with it is to create their own container and just move all of the material in. So yeah, so what I did here was a div, I added some padding, and then I created a container, which I made flex. So now I have the ability to justify left and right. And then I moved all the brand elements in. I added a wrapper around the nav so that I've got a little more control over that, and I keep it within the client first naming convention. So nav underscore container, nav underscore logo wrapper, nav underscore logo image, etc. So one thing I did, I left this to show you. So I started creating, or I started adjusting the nav menu. When I created my background color here, obviously I need my links to be in a different color. So I changed this one, but I'm going to change this about now. I'm going to start adding my nav link, because nav link is the class that I've added the white color to. So now I'm going to start doing that. And now you can see as soon as I start typing, all of my nav items show up and I can very easily find my nav link. Same thing here. And nav link. So now, very simply, those are all done. Okay, so.
Can I ask actually quickly?
Yeah.
I don't know whether, do you know this? You know, when you go into like the third tab along in the right hand column, and you can like clean up the classes. If you have like 1,000 client first classes that you aren't yet using and you try and clean it up, what happens?
I haven't done that yet, because that's the last thing I do when I do a build, right?
I clean them up periodically just to make sure there aren't like overhanging things. I don't know. It makes me feel like I'm keeping things neat and tidy. But
well, yeah, I mean, I when I was working today, as I was setting this up, I was, you know, sort of, there's the odd time when I'll accidentally create a class. So I was coming in and getting rid of them, which makes it really simple, but I know they're all down at the bottom here. Essentially, I think what I'm planning with the site that I'm currently working on is when I get to the end, I will then do a cleanup of the styles and get rid of anything. So any styles that I haven't used would then, you know, be deleted. So, you know,
I think too, a lot of them are probably like, they are used in like, especially if you got like a style guide, you know, the style guide, a lot of them are set in there. So technically they're not unused, so they won't be deleted. But, you know, if there are any unused ones, yeah, you would be deleting them.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially like if I'm using a clonable or something like that, I, you know, when I don't actually use those sections, if they're not really part of, you know, the global styles and all of those would be part of the style guide. But if there were components that I deleted out of the navigation, out of the nav panel, then when I delete the styles, then they should be gone. So I'll let you know. But yeah, I mean, it's like if I was going through and accident, like I say, it's easy to accidentally create a misnamed style, and then you can just easily come in and get rid of them. I wouldn't be trying to clean things up until I'm sure that I'm not going to need them. So especially the fins, like the stuff that's part of client first.
Rachel, stop trying to be so tidy. Just let the
the conclusion of that question is you're doing it wrong. Don't do that.
well, no, I mean, it's like I say, it's like if you know for certain there's something you're not going to use or you don't want, right? Or you've used it and now you've decided to change it and you've changed and you've got a whole new style, then sure, go back and get rid of it. But I wouldn't get rid of any of the client first styles until I know for sure I don't need them.
Well, I was wondering if maybe the process of uploading them kind of set them there in a non-movable way, potentially as well.
I think it's just a clonable project. So
yeah, unless they're attached to something, they're totally movable. And I mean, there's no real benefit to cleaning up while you're working. Like they're not going to slow your stuff down noticeably at all while you're working. It really is. I mean, you know, Penny, I'm the same way. I clean them up just before I launch a site. Like before, when we're done, we're about to launch, go in and clean all that stuff up, because it will affect performance on the front, you know, back end or when you launch it. But as far as when you're building it, it's not going to affect things enough that it's worth cleaning up every so often.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that I found is I was using System Flow, and System Flow comes with all of these components and all of these pages that you don't end up using. And you've got to go through, because there's no way of bulk deleting pages. You've got to go through and get rid of everything. And that's a painful thing. It really is. So I like the fact that, you know, there isn't all of that with this system. Alrighty, so
this is giving me Monica vibes, to be honest.
What's that?
Sorry?
This is giving me Monica vibes from Friends.
Yeah.
A lot of
the girl.
A lot of cleaning and tidying.
Oh, and that
Right. Yeah, exactly. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically recreate this component live, because this is just an image right now. So I'm in my main wrapper over here on my nav panel, and I've been learning some shortcuts finally. So we're going to see how well I do with those. So Command E brings up my find div, and Command Enter gets my cursor into my selector box. And I am going, woohoo!
Oh, I did not know that.
I know, that one's a good one.
That is a good
love
one.
This one. I love this one. And I haven't used it a lot, but it's like, it makes this so much faster. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a section here called services. Now, I'm not doing, this is not the component yet. This is just the section name. So we don't have an underscore, and we're using section as our prefix here. So we're going to create that. Within that, now I am going to create a div, which is going to be page padding. So here's the other great thing about the selector bar and the search thing, is that I can start typing page, and then I can say page pad, right? Or peg pad, and it brings up the beginning of each of those words. Boom, done. Now I'm going to make another div, enter, and I am going to call this one container large. So container large. So this is one of the pre-written classes, and this is going to set the width to 80 rems, and that's and give it auto margin, and that's all that does. So within this now, I am going to create my padding. So I am doing padding vertical. So now I'm adding padding on top and bottom of this space. So right now there's nothing there, but now I'm going to hit Control Enter again, which brings my cursor back in here, and I'm going to add padding huge. And now what I have right now is this is the center, is where the next thing is going to happen. I've got padding top and bottom, but no padding on the sides, just top and bottom. All right, so now I'm going to create my next div, and I'm going to call this, now I'm building my component. So services is what we're calling this component, underscore component. So now I have a div that is where I'm going to put everything else in. This, we want to have.
You don't do that on the. Can you open up your DOM there on the left?
Oh yeah, sorry.
Oops. For the section services.
Yeah.
Okay, so you created section services, and then page padding. Yes. Container large
is this section here, right? That is the center of the screen. Inside of that, I put the padding, and now I have my services component div.
So
right.
It's okay. I don't want to like I don't want to don't want to derail what you're saying. I think what I would have normally done, and maybe this just isn't the client first way, but so I would have had section services, and then I would have had a container inside, which would effectively be the page padding, right? That's keeping it in, I think, right? And then inside of page padding, I would have had services component, and I would have like set the width, I would have had the padding on it. And I basically, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, I would have cut out 2 of the divs.
Right. But what this does is it gives you, right, but now you've got a div that's got a bunch of stuff that you might not reuse again, right? Whereas with this, we've got our section. Oops, it keeps closing up on me. And we've got our padding. So all the padding does is add that side padding, right? Then we've got our container inside of that.
Yep.
Now I can use that container large anywhere because it's got nothing else going on.
Yeah.
Right? So I can always use container large anywhere. I could stick container large inside of something else and it's still going to be container large. Then my padding goes inside of that. Again, because I've got this consistent, the ability to use this class anywhere.
Yep.
And now the component. So then the component is now sort of nested inside all the rest of that, right?
So whereas what they're recommending is like add more divs so that you can have like a class and you can reuse it in other places. Whereas I would have, if I was before client first, I would have kind of combined 3 of these into one and then just like set the width, set the vertical padding, done all the stuff. And I would have had, and
now you would have had a div that you could only use in that way. Right. Whereas you notice that I have set almost nothing in the style panel so far. Most of this is all global classes, right? Pre-written classes.
Is there a performance difference to that with so many divs?
The understanding is that it's probably not really. I think that, I think somebody brought that up when Joe was first presenting it, and it was like it's probably very small if there is much of a performance hit. And these, I mean, I've tested pretty much all of the templates and they all, on GT metrics, and they rank at like A and 98, 99%, load speed. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about it too much.
And I was going to say, if you're Facebook, maybe you care. And then I'm thinking, wait, actually, if you ever inspect Facebook, like it's terrible.
Adding the divs, like the hand coder, HTML, CSS coder in me, this gives me anxiety, but she's right. The performance difference is going to be so minimal. It's and like if I was hand coding this, I wouldn't make all these divs, because you could do div and you could set all of these different classes on just one div, which you can't really do in Webflow, because as soon as you add another class, it's really a subclass that's tied to that first class.
Now it's a combo class, right?
And so if you're hand coding it, you could do it that way with one div. But because it doesn't work that way in Webflow, you kind of have to make all those separate divs, which is fine. I think it's pretty negligible, the impact it's going to have on anything.
But if I ever export my code and send it over to my developer friend who's going to use it for something, he's going to, that's when maybe I don't use client first, because he's going to give me shit about like, what are all these divs doing in here?
So don't send it to your
I know.
Your buddy, right? Just use Webflow. Why would you bother?
Well, and I mean, the thing is it's still going to, like, when you export it, at the very least, it's still going to be really organized. So even I think even your developer friend they may be like, why are there so many divs? But they're still going to get it. And it's still going to be organized in a way that they can understand. They may go in and clean it up and combine them down to one div, but you'll be all right.
But at least it'll be clean and clear as to what it is. Yeah. All right. So we're going to make this one a grid so that we have 2 sections within this. So now I'm going to start working in the style panel. So now it's a grid, but we only want 1 row. So I'm going to get rid of 1 row. And since I'm rebuilding something that's already in a clonable, I know that we want to actually set this gap to 4 rems. And if there were additional rows, this one was set to 2.5 rems. So that's just what's in the clonable. But you'll notice that our image is a little smaller than this one. So we're going to take it to a 1.25. And now our grid is done. And let me just check and make sure. But not quite, because what we want to do is we want to center that grid, and I want to do that. Okay, that way that's just what I figured out from the other one. All right, so now within this, I want to create a text wrapper here and an image wrapper on the left. So we've got a grid. So the next thing we're going to do is create a, oops, not a div, we're going to have a div. And we're going to call this, this is the one on the left. So this is going to be services text wrapper. And I'll come back to that in a moment. I'm going to create another div here and call it services image wrapper. Okay, so that's our item on the right. Okay, I'm going to open this up here. So let's deal with this image wrapper first. Inside this, I'm going to put an image, and I'm going to call this. So I got check my cheat sheet here. Services image.
The shortcut is blowing my mind. This keyboard
isn't this
shortcut.
great?
Oh my
It's
God.
just wonderful. Yeah. Now, according to the clonable, where am I here? And my services image wrapper has been is set to 32 rems high. And we want our image to be 100% width and 100% height. And I'm going to now go get my image, which I've already uploaded. And you'll notice okay, we'll go with that for the moment. There might be something that's not quite right. All right, so this text wrapper, I'm going to align to the center, and I'm going to align it left. And inside this, I'm going to put a div, and so I'm going to put some margin inside of this. So margin bottom. So margin bottom is basically a div with some padding, with some margin on the bottom. And you'll notice that there's actually nothing there, but we have sort of set that there's no top and side margin. There's nothing there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to actually set the size of that margin. We're going to go with a small. And that now adds a 1 rem margin at the bottom of that section. And to this, we are going to add the text for technical support. So inside this, I am going to add a heading, and I'm going to make that our H2 and technical support. You'll notice that that's a little bit large in terms of text. What we want to do is we're going to give this a heading, oops, small.
Oh, you don't use like a text, you don't do text size small.
No, because there's already heading sizes already set up. You don't have to worry. So there's text sizes set up, but there's also heading sizes set up all separately. So you don't have to like mess around with setting a text size on a particular heading. It's already, you could go in and change the style guide.
Yeah.
Has all that stuff already set up.
Wouldn't you usually have all of your H2s being a standard size though? Is this just like in the case you want to override that?
Yeah, in this situation, this is just overriding that. Okay. So normally what I had before would have been a standard H2 size, right? Sure. But what we want to do is we want to sort of call attention text-wise to this text, but technical support really is the important part that we want Google to know is the header, right? Yeah. So now what we're going to do is we are going to create another div, is divland here, and we're going to do the margin. Oops. Hang on. Got a little lost there.
That get put inside margin bottom? Or no, that's inside services. Yeah, that's okay, cool. That's right, I think.
Yeah. So oops, I did that wrong. I want mar bottom. And I want I'll tell you this now you see what I just did there. Managed to go and create that.
Don't clean it up until the end though. Don't clean that
well,
up until the
could.
Just
end.
leave it there.
All right.
Just leave it.
You can just remove
Give
it.
Rachel
I
some
can go to my
anxiety.
style panel and look, it's somewhere in there. Anyway, I can get rid of it. So let's try that again. So margin small, you just have to remember to go pick that. That's where I always get caught. And now inside this, I'm going to add another heading, and we're going to make that an H3. And by the magic of copy and paste, there we go.
Love it.
All right. Last thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a paragraph. And there's my text. Now, you'll notice that the text up here is a little lighter in color. We have already set up a bunch of different text treatments, and
Text
this one
dash color.
Nope, text style muted. I only know this because it was in the clonable, right? But it's there. It's already a global class. The text style muted, and it just takes the color down.
So why isn't the paragraph in a div?
This is what's in the clonable.
Yeah,
because it doesn't.
I
Need,
suppose.
right?
Yeah, you could maybe
Essentially.
could do it in a div. I suppose is the answer. They just didn't.
Could. Yeah, exactly. You could if you wanted to. Because when I get to doing these buttons, I need to add some margin or some padding around them. So you could put the margin on the paragraph.
Yeah, you can put the margin on the bottom. You probably got to throw a container on those buttons anyway to get them.
I do.
Side aligned. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So then back
in this, then, since you do the margin wrappers, do all of the heading, like the base headings, have no margins on them? Because I know a lot of times by default, like an H1 will just have a top or a bottom margin to separate it. Do you remove that then from the base?
I think they are already removed.
Okay.
I believe, yeah.
So
that
if you want any margin, you throw it in a div.
Exactly, which gives you all of the, you're not having to then go back and change sort of a standard setting. It's already clean. So then you just add whatever you want to it. All right, so then the last thing we'll do here, I'll just close those up. Last thing we're going to do is I'm going to add, this is where it gets a little bit hairy with me, so we'll just hang with me here. And so I'll start by calling that a button wrap.
You do services.
I could, except that this might be something I might use somewhere else. So in that situation, so now I could create a button row. I'm actually going to wrap each of these separately so that then I can add some margin on the second one. But when it goes to mobile and you maybe want to. Yeah. But it's like, this is the kind of button situation that you might use in other places. So I wouldn't necessarily tie it specifically to this. If this was the only place I was going to use it and it was going to look different from every other button, then that might be an opportunity to, that might be a time to create a button that was specific to that component. So within this, then I'm now going to go button. And I'm going to give it a class name of button. Oops. I'm going to use the existing button class, which is part of client first. And if you go to your style guide, this is part of the clonable that you get. I haven't done anything with the clonable other than change the color, the standard color that it comes with to build marketing blue. And I did the same thing with the button secondary. So by for some reason that doesn't look, because I didn't I didn't commit it. I chose it, but I didn't actually set it. So there we are. But on my button wrap, I'm going to add some padding. Actually, I'm going to add a 1 rem padding, top and bottom.
Now you're doing that on the button wrap div instead of a padding div because it's kind of a component you might use elsewhere, right?
That's kind of what I'm thinking. It's like, again, this isn't hard and fast, and I've worked with a couple of different templates, and like different people at Finsweet have done the different templates, and I think you'll probably find that there's possibly slight variations, from one to the next in just how the guys have interpreted it. For the most part, they'll be consistent. But again, it does leave you that flexibility. And now we don't want this whole button here. Well, there's different ways I could do that. I could basically copy this button and paste it again. And then instead of button, I could use button secondary, which is that other, oops, wrong one. I could go button secondary. And this one lost its class when I messed around there. And then I could, in this situation, I could create maybe a combo class. Combo classes, you go is, I could give it a name. I could say pushed right. Oops, didn't spell that right. Oops. And I could then give that a margin of 1 rem to push it over. The other option would be I could create a second button wrap. And then in that situation, if I did that, I would then get rid of it here, get rid of that one. And then I would make each of these, you see that now they're stacked. So I would make each of these inline block.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And on this one, rather than putting my is pushed right there, I might put that on my button wrap. All right. So now is pushed right doesn't exist now because it's a combo class on the other one, right? Or I could just add, I could change the button wrap and give it a different name and add that there. So essentially we did it. Oh my God, I got through it.
What's interesting, it was a great job, Penny. Thanks for walking us through that. And I think what I'm seeing, I took a peek at the videos and the documentation because I was like, I gotta kind of get started. And I think when I first started out and it's like, oh, this is the Finsweet client first. It's like, this is how you do it. And there are a few things that are like, yes, this is how you do it. But it's more like, this is how you should name things. And this is kind of the structure that you want from a page standpoint. You want to have a page wrapper. You want to have the main wrapper. You want to have sections and then padding. But it's not beyond that. It's kind of like, you can still really do things however you want. Yeah,
absolutely. That's the beauty of all of this, is that, it's just a guideline and a strategy, and it makes sense when you start working with it because it's natural language as opposed to funky abbreviations that don't that you got to wrap around your head around. So
okay, so I was writing down questions, and these are questions for Penny, questions for the group, questions for whoever. But so the other thing that clicked for me with this before my questions was, and we talked about this a little bit, was the divs. Like, coming from where I was hand coding everything, that was like how I cut my teeth in development, was hand coding. It was like, cut out the extra divs. You don't need all this extra junk. That's just more stuff to write, more stuff to keep track of. And so to me here, seeing this, having the switch flipped when it was like, no, extra divs don't matter. It's speed and it's clarity. That's what matters, not necessarily having like the fewest number of divs.
Yeah. And it's the consistency that no matter where you go in the site, if you want to add a margin of a certain size or whatever, you just use that class. And because they're all global classes, you just stick them on and away they go, right? You're not, it's like.
So like divs are your friend. I would normally go, this technical support here. Let's throw margin bottom, margin small on that. But we can kind of, I mean, and I suppose maybe in Finsweet they'd say, yeah, you technically could do that. Yeah, maybe they'd say that, right?
Yeah, you could. And then, but if you wanted to use that again somewhere else without that margin bottom, well, now you got to create another div, right? Or
it's just got to be a global combo, or
or you have to create, now you got to create a different heading and come up with a name for that version, with no margin or something, right? I mean, and you saw how quickly that came together and how little work I actually had to do in the style panel.
Yeah, that's true.
To set it all up.
Yeah. So here are my questions.
Do you want me to stop sharing? I don't know if there's anything in here you want to look at as we go.
These are more, you don't have to, if you want to stop sharing, you can stop sharing.
I'm thinking I could see your faces again.
Oh yeah. Oh, hi.
You just want to write email in privacy.
So the questions, a few questions. One, I'm curious, how many people, like, this is show of hands, is I very rarely use grid layout. I use flex layout like it's going out of style. And so this was just more curious, like I could have achieved what you had there. I probably could have I could have created a wrapper around the content, a wrapper around the image, set some widths on it, and achieve the same thing. But I was just curious, a lot of people I never see a time where I'm like, this is where I need a grid, but maybe other people are like, no, I love grid. Like grid is actually the best. And I'm just kind of curious what other people do.
I've generally come across people preferring flex. It was definitely something I intuitively picked up. I'm only jumping in because me and Dustin had a conversation lately, because he sent off one of our company sites to a freelancer. He did the entire thing in grids and it was beautiful. Whole thing. It was wonderful. Like the work that he did. It was obviously just like his thing and he got it. And it was like tremendous and really impressively responsive. So I am no longer a grid skeptic, because I've seen like the power of what it can achieve. If anything, I feel like I'm open-minded to being swayed in either direction. But John, i.e. John Lenker of Lenker Consulting, our boss, is all in on the flex.
Yep. I will comment on that, Rachel. So yes, it looked beautiful and he built it and it responded beautifully. However, when I went to try to make some changes, it was kind of a nightmare, because I didn't know, because I'm not super versed in the grid, and he had areas created and he had some of the areas were tied to other grids. So I went in to try to change some stuff to make it responsive in a different way. And when I deleted it, it deleted it on other pages as well. And it was like, wait a minute, what's happening here? Or I couldn't do that. Wait,
what is that?
I don't know. I don't understand it, which is why it was kind of like, it looks awesome. But if you don't know the real inner workings of the grid system, it made it really hard for me to try to work on. So and yes, like Rachel said, our boss wants us to be in flex. So
I don't know. I know that Nelson from Webflow is like all in on grid. There's and I actually missed. There is a YouTube channel where or a YouTube video where he talks about, he's like now 100% on grid. I've never seen that one. Yeah, there is this whole thing around creating areas within grids, and then if you use that grid, and I think it's like if you then use the same grid on another page, and then when you go to delete it, it's connected to that grid layout.
It's almost like a symbol, or like there's like
almost
a main
like
grid.
that, right? Or it's I can't, but I'm not sure if you then change the class name, if that sort of changes. I'm not sure.
Wow.
But yeah, I have run into that a little bit, and you know, I don't know grid all that well. I kind of go back and forth between the two. Yeah.
And there's times when I feel like, is it the really good people who know it really well? They're like, it's like, okay, I'm master's level, but PhD level, they're all using grid, and and then I'm like, oh, I need to graduate up, but I just don't, I don't know.
It's maybe knowing both enough to understand when to use one versus the other, right?
Yeah.
Like Flex gives you that ability to center things and center align and justify, and things that that regular grid doesn't.
Yeah. Sometimes I've tried to drag stuff on the grid, and it's just like can't get it in the right. I don't know. There's anyway. So that was my first question.
Can I share my screen? So I can show you when I find grid is very useful.
Yeah, please. That's great.
That's because I use that. I use that for a footer section. So let me share my screen. Where was I? You guys see that screen, all right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this is a project I'm working on right now. And let me just go to.
It looks like you're using client first.
He is.
Yes.
Excellent.
So that's why I was really interested in today's presentation by Penny. Thank you so much.
Did it help?
You're
not way beyond me there. Okay, good.
I needed to know a lot of stuff. Anyways, so I'm here at the footer component.
Yeah.
So, okay, you see these links, footer links, operation responsibilities. I put all of them in a grid.
Okay.
That's because, there's like so many, spaces between, these links. So you have to put like paddings and margins, between each links. That's kind of annoying. So I just set it up in grid, and they do it all for you right here. Auto.
Exactly.
And you just put one, spacer that once rem to rem right here, and all this gives you all the spacing, right. So that's how I use my grid.
To play devil's advocate on that, couldn't you have done Flex with the distribute evenly as well, and it would just distribute everything vertically evenly throughout the div there?
Yeah, that could have been, could have been done.
Say kind of the similar effect, but
yeah. I mean, I use grid with particularly doing things like blog posts in if you're going to do like a three or four across, right? Then it once I finally figured out where the grid goes in relation to the component or the
collection list.
The collection list, yes.
Yeah,
thank you.
I like using grid on collection lists too.
Yeah, it's very nice that way. But the other place you can use it with, if you had several columns in your footer. So if you had, that's where grid's really helpful again as well.
Right.
It makes it really easy to change the responsiveness too. You switch to a one and you get rid of one of the columns, and it just shifts automatically for you, which is lovely.
Exactly.
Yep. Absolutely.
So it sounds like what I'm hearing is grid is a good option when you've got a lot of columns and things. And then I never thought about using grid. I mean, you've got a really good point here, Jim, of like, Yeah, if you want to be really exact about like your spacings and like you can don't just think about grid as a way to lay things out in different coordinates, but you can think about grid as a way to just quickly space things out.
Exactly.
Yep.
And then also, what you guys, maybe Dustin mentioned about, when you were changing something, built by this beautiful grid layout built by your freelancer, and when you change something, it came out really messed up. I think that's when the client first naming system comes in handy, because if he could have arranged the component in the client first system way, let's say component grid, I don't know, like let's see,
actually, if I can steal the sharing from you, I can show you what he did.
Great.
Let's see. All right, is it showing up this?
Stop share.
Okay, so this is the layout, which is very nice. We got all this going on, but then when you click into here, you can see he set up like a 12 grid system and set up all these areas. And so when I was trying to like move some of these around, it was just not working right. And it was like, I just didn't working with areas like that. And it's like, it started just really, that was beyond me. I'm not that deep into grids yet. So.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that I'm just, I don't think I would ever set up a grid like this. I used to, but
I would have done it in one of two ways. I would have either had a div across the top, middle, I would have either done, so it looks like contact us and the number on the right have the same baseline. So I would have either done a div across the top, middle, bottom, and then stuff inside there, or I would add a div on the left and a div on the right, and I would have spread those. Actually, that's probably what I would have done: div on the left, div on the right. And now what I first would have done before client first, it would have been it would have been probably 3 divs, one around the whole thing, one left, one right. And now it sounds like the thinking is you'd have your section, your wrapper, your container, your padding, then your component, and then and then div around the top text, div around the middle text, div around the bottom text, and then div on the right, div around the, so.
Yep.
And so I effectively gone from 3 divs to like 10 divs.
Right.
If that, about that.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, so I think Corey chatted, he said, wow, you guys use a lot more divs than me. And I think I was with Corey in that, like, I actually didn't use that many divs, but it sounds like client first is kind of saying, what's the big deal? Just use them, stop,
Yeah. Again, for that reusability, for the speed of building it, right? And because then you're using global classes to do a bunch of stuff that you normally have to do in the style panel. I'm surprised. It's like, looking at that site, it's kind of like the guy's taken the 12 column layout that you use in design and then recreated it. And it's kind of like, God, like that almost, that just feels kind of old in a lot of ways now.
Like an old table.
Yeah, well, and it's kind of like, it's kind of unnecessary because he's created it and it's only in that spot, right? And
you actually bring up that's a great segue though, Penny, because I'm wondering, because I design most of my sites using a 12 column grid.
Yeah.
And what I'm wondering is sometimes I've got, is everyone familiar with the 12 column grid system?
Yep.
Yes, no? Okay.
Yep.
So I will have, of my 12, sometimes I've got like an eight columns in the middle, right? 2 on each side that are empty, 8 columns in the middle, or I'll go like, 4, 4, 4, 6 and 6, And so I actually had started doing the lame thing that they recommend, that they're like, we don't really want this. And I was doing stuff where I was like 5/12. Like, this is 5 columns, right? 6/12. This is a 6 column, 4/12, 4, so I was kind of I was naming my classes. I would have containers that were indicating how many columns wide I wanted this container to be. And so what I'm wondering is with client first, how do you translate the 12 column grid system in your design? How do you translate that to client first when the classes are more like container large, container medium, container small?
I guess the question is, 12 column grid comes from design.
Yeah.
Does it have to be translated exactly to code? Right. I mean, I've definitely seen that used in Webflow for sure, right? Where all those columns are there. But does it need to just look like the design? Right?
Yeah. So if I may, what it sounds like what you're saying is just because it's 4 columns in the design doesn't mean that you need to set out and have one div that is 4 columns in the build. You can still have a large wrapper that takes up the whole thing, or a large container that takes up the whole thing. And then you have your component inside of that. And then your text, whatever you called it, your like text wrapper. Then you could set your width. You could effectively set your column width, the number of columns. You could set it on that. You'd be like, oh, this is 40% or something. So really what you're doing is the container, large, medium, small, effectively should be the maximum width of that kind of section, right? So if you've got content that is 12 columns wide, then you're going to go in with a container large, do your thing. If you've got a design that is 8 columns in the middle, maybe you're using container small, and it's something that's like right in the middle. And so you're using the container to kind of set the outer boundaries of what that content needs. But then on the inside where you would normally do the number of columns, you can just have your wrappers around that stuff.
Because I think so. Because in the end, I mean, this is a visual building system, right? So it's about making it look, because, again, I mean, the other thing was, when with those columns is that's fine on a desktop when you're on a smaller device. Those columns are going to change. It's not going to be 4 columns anymore. It's probably going to be 8. It might be 12, right? So, it's kind of like, maybe it doesn't really matter whether it's exactly 4 columns. It's like, does it translate the design? That's how I would think about it.
Wish we had a really diehard designer in here to argue passionately about this, because I feel like they have strong opinions. It's like,
do they?
Right. Except that don't forget, designers are used to right? I mean, how long has it taken to get designers to understand the fact that pixels and screen sizes are different 70,000 times a day, right? It's
a daily battle.
Yeah.
Mohammed, you're a designer,
right? It may
right?
not be exactly.
I'm a designer, yeah.
His blood is boiling. His blood is boiling right now. He's like, these people wanting to just
maybe they don't
willy-nilly
even 12-point thing.
Well, I'll build something that our designer gives us. And, I mean, we got to be a little flexible, especially when it comes to responsiveness. And I'll, put it together, whatever, and we send it back to him for kind of art director approval. And he pulls up the grid system on his browser, and he pulls out his rulers and measurements. He's like, this isn't quite 20 pixels over or whatever. I'm just like, dude, you have to be a little flexible with this. It's web-based. It's not print. Yeah. It's a little bit different. And I mean, honest to God, it is a daily thing where I have to be like, no, we're good, man. We're good. I promise you it's good.
What I usually tell the developer team is basically I don't give a pixel measurement, but I give a percentage measurement. So if it occupies 4 columns in a 12 column, I'll say like, hey, this needs to be proportioned even though whatever the screen width is. So pixel size is basically just for the design alone. So if I design in a 720p artboard, so I have to use pixel because Figma doesn't give any other option to me. So from my side, just it's like a how to say, a counter argument that I don't have any other option than pixels. So
right, yeah.
Love it. Can I ask like one more question?
Sure.
Or one or two? Do you guys ever change the element types? You bring in your divs, but ever you're doing like sections or articles or asides, or you ever change those up, or do you just leave them as divs? I feel like I always just leave mine as divs, but
you mean in the settings panel?
Yeah.
I tend to set them because that makes a difference as far as accessibility goes. Screen readers will read, if it's an article, if it's a section, if it's a, whatever, all those different options. That makes a difference when it comes to accessibility. So I tend to try to go in there and change them up when needed.
Yeah.
I don't always remember to, but.
But you can still use the naming system, but then do
that.
that.
Then just change it. Yeah.
In the settings for the div block, right?
It was more, I was just kind of curious, like I'm a one-man shop doing, working for clients, on nights and weekends, and, don't tell my clients that I don't have as all the time in the world, but, on the list of priorities of things to do, updating the specific element type kind of falls towards the bottom. And I was just curious if that was,
it's not something people talk a lot about when they're talking around accessibility and things like that. And so, yeah.
I tend to do it for the big ones, like I'm looking at the list right now. Header and footer, I always set those. Navigation, I always set those just because for a screen reader to know this is the navigation section, this is the footer. That's important. Sections, articles, asides, those, you're looking at AAA compliance versus AA compliance on those kind of things, more than likely. Yeah. So it kind of depends on the client too. If they're one that really needs to push accessibility as far as they can, it'll be worth your time. If they're not, maybe just do the main ones. And
you ever look at the HTML5 outline?
I have, not lately.
Like what you can do is there used to be a I don't know if I have it anymore. There's a plugin that you can add to Chrome, and you can click it and you can say, what's the outline of this page? You can see like the headings and the hierarchy of all of the site. And it basically is like, here's what your page looks like to Google or to a screen reader. And if you should be able to effectively like look at that outline and like understand everything that's going on the page, right? That was something that I had always understood when I was first learning. It was like HTML. It's kind of like HTML5 time, and it was like, yeah, like you should be able to like when you look at the HTML5 outline, you should be able to read that outline, and it should give you an idea of what's going on. Similar to like how we're talking about these classes for client first, it's like, yeah, you can read the classes and you can know what's going on. The HTML5 outline should be the same way. Again, one of those things falls down on the list for me, but I'm curious if anyone else.
Yeah, I have not used that for a while, but yeah, I know what you mean. And I think there's a website testing system called, or an organization, WebAIM, and they've got an accessibility tool that you can use, and I think you can actually sort of look at certain parts of the site, and you can actually look at that outline and see how you've got things set up, but it'll also tell you if you've skipped a heading and various other accessibility things that you may not quite have done right. So it's
Yeah, like I'll show you here. Let me, if I can quickly, and I know people would probably gotta see if I can. So I just added it to Chrome.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Let's see if let's like make up a site. Let's go to lenker.com.
Oh God.
And
Don't.
let's look at the HTML5 outline.
For the record, this wasn't me. This wasn't me. This was built well before I joined.
This was built like 5 years ago, had nothing to do with this.
So you can see like, this is the kind of thing where we should be able to like read through and go, oh, okay. So untitled body, untitled nav, your marketing A team. So now you get to like your marketing A team. We're obsessed. You like, if it was like, we're obsessed with your success, we're obsessed with your success, get a free consult. Like you could see how you should be able to like read. Yeah. I think this is all based on headings, right?
I don't know, because I'm not sure what that is, because it's not actually saying like H1, H2, right? It's just, it's using an outlining tool to basically
I
say
think
this
you get
is
your
inside
headings.
of this.
Yeah, I think you get your headings. So this would be like your, or why would you have the body though? Like what would be a good site, like New York Times or something?
Yeah.
It's not ours.
At the very least, not ours. Yeah.
It's not ours.
Oh, see, theirs is bad too.
What even is this? I'm so intrigued. I'm going to play around with this and see what the deal is. Who has
Well,
the
it should be able.
outline?
I bet it's better if we go to an actual article. It'll probably be. Oh, of course, got to pay.
Go to webaim.org.
Yeah, go to WebAIM and
like they're built for accessibility. I just checked it on there, and it looks like a much more clean outline when you run that.
Yeah.
No,
Main
not
navigation.
Oh, okay, right.
Main navigation. We have a web accessibility in mind. Training, site certification, technical. So you can see like these are this is kind of what it's more current features, and so you can see what the outline is now.
Yeah.
My understanding when it was being taught to me was that this is much easier for a search engine, anything crawling your site. They very clearly know what the hierarchy of your website is, and therefore it's easier to crawl. It's easier to understand what is important about it. I can't remember though if it is driven by divs or if I think it's driven by headings. But
what happens when you click on the link? Does it anchor?
It should take you down to that thing.
Yeah, to that section.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you can see your current features. My guess is that H1, H2. My guess is current features is going to be in H3. And no, it's an H2. So maybe these are H1s. Oh, maybe these are main navigation is a, let's go. We have web accessibility in mind. Yeah, that's an H1 for this section. And then accessibility training, H2. Yeah, H2. Yep. H2 again. So anyway, it's from an accessibility
survey
standpoint.
is 3.
Yes.
So it keeps going down like that. Yeah. So it bases off, I think it bases off headers and section ID identifiers. Like I think main navigation is probably set as, hey, this is navigation.
So try this. Grab so webaim.org. So go really meta here. So take without the, so just grab that HTML or the domain name URL, and now go to wave.webaim.org. Yeah. Okay, and now paste WebAIM into the web address. I'm gonna say, go a little meta here. We'll see if it'll break it.
It'd be funny if it had a little Easter egg where it said very.
Do you know that if you type Google into Google, you break the internet?
Really? So this is this is Waves, or the Wave tool, right?
Yep.
You can see they have 0 errors. It doesn't come up very often. Click on structure in the top there. You see there's 30 structural elements, but if you click on that where that little icon is, right? It will show you what the structure is. So there's your H1.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right,
H2s,
and now you can
H3s,
see,
H2s.
yeah.
Oh, you want to know what I think?
Yes.
I'd have to go back and look at this, but I think this was also back when Google said you should only have one H1 on a page. And now Google doesn't care if you have more H1s on a page, which probably throws off your, like, you were supposed to have one H1 for the whole page. And then everything under that is H2s. And then everything under H2s are H3. And you never skip a level. And, you know, but now that things are a little different, maybe they don't care quite as much about that.
But the thing is, from an accessibility point of view, they still care, right?
Yep.
What happened was with the H1s is they said, if you start like a new section, so if you've got like an article, you can have an H1 within an article within a page, right? But it's like, so now it's in its own little container, and it's obvious that it's not like you've got a bunch of H1s on the page. It's like, it's kind of like we discount this other one, the article thing with the H1s, right?
Okay.
Yeah, but it's like you wouldn't have H1, H2, H1, H2, H1, H2
Yeah.
within the main content of the page.
Yep.
That's my understanding of it. Right.
You know what
but
I've used for what I've used for accessibility stuff before is the there's a little plugin that I've used that adds all of these like ADA stuff to your site. What is it called? Userway. Have you heard of that?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've used that.
Yeah. It was pretty slick, pretty easy to add on, right?
Mm-hmm.
If anyone else is.
Is that like one of the JavaScripts that you add in?
Yeah.
So you need to be careful with those. I've read a lot of stuff about those. In fact, that company I was at before, we actually used one. I can't even remember what it was at this point. They still have it on the site. And it seems like it's really cool and it seems like it's really useful. But apparently to people with actual disabilities, it's completely useless. And
really?
they are still suing sites left and right that use this stuff. It's not the magic pill that it seems like it is, because it seems amazing, but it is not.
Yeah, you get this little deal and you're like, oh yeah, I want bigger text.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, I want,
here I can
I've heard the same thing, that there's that people find that it doesn't actually, it looks great for, if you're a non person without a disability. It looks like it should do what it should do, but it doesn't work the way we think it does.
I literally built
Accessibility is the one that we used.
Yes, that's the one I've heard that people say, doesn't really work.
I had a client who their business is building homes for people with disabilities. And so we were like, well, we better be able to make this website work for people with disabilities.
Accessible. Yep.
And so we used this Userway, but I'm curious to learn more about what you're saying, because if it's really not great.
Dustin is like a secret accessibility guru.
Dustin
actually did a internal presentation about accessibility guidelines to the Lenker team. I've been trying to get him to present for a while.
So what do you recommend then?
Doing it by hand. I mean, actually manually doing it right. Making your alt tags are set, making sure your tags are properly tagged. I mean, like we were talking about setting them as navs, setting them as footers, setting those things. When you are setting colors, making sure, I mean, Webflow makes it really easy when you're doing colors. It tells you if it fails or not right there. Making sure it doesn't fail. And you know, I'll be honest.
Contrast.
Yeah, the contrast, and it lets you know if it's going to fail or not. And it's not 100%. Like, you know, I'm looking at one of ours right now where we've got white text on a pretty much totally black background, and it's actually saying it fails, which is not accurate, but it does a good job of giving you an idea of it. One thing that I ran into a lot early on is making sure your site is keyboard accessible. So being able to tab through all of your navigation. And I've noticed that with some of the Webflow navigations, they're not inherently accessible. So you have to do a little bit of work on those to make them register in the DOM order of things as something you can tab through.
How do you do that?
Oh man, it was a while ago that I did that.
Sounds like you should refresh yourself and then present.
I should.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it would be really nice as well. Even I love it when we can like unearth stupid things that don't work and then let people know that that's the case and that actually, you know, these things are just incorrect legends. So I think that's always valuable information and a very easy pitfall to fall in by the sounds of things. If the
it sounds like Dustin, 8 things that you can do to your website to make it more accessible. Boom. December Minneapolis Webflow Meetup.
Oh, God.
You have been assigned.
Oh, sounds like Webflow would love to talk about that one on their monthly newsletter.
Might need to give me more than a month to put that together.
There is there is some stuff in Client First. They mention it, and they've got, I know that, and it seems like they're working on some JavaScript solutions for some things. But again, it's like, yeah, does JavaScript work with the screen reader? This is what I don't know, right? Is that one of the reasons why it's a problem with some of the other systems?
Do you usually, I've got a lot of like icons and like little stuff on sites, and I'm always setting them as just like, this is a decorative thing. I don't need it. Like, they don't need to know what this is. Do people normally do that? Or are you always putting like star icon as the alt text? And you know what I'm talking about? I
usually put if you mark them as decorative.
Yeah.
That's usually fine with stuff like that, where it's icons. If its job isn't to convey a meaning, you're usually okay. Like if you have a home icon and that is your link to home, but there's no word home there, then you want to put that there. If it's an icon that's attached to a word that explains it, then you're usually okay marking it as decorative.
I'll even get stuff that's like, you know, it'll be people high-fiving in the office, right? I don't have that, but like people high-fiving in the office. And then it's just like a picture that's going along with like, we're a collaborative team.
Yep.
I look at that and like, I don't know, like, I don't want to look at it. So why would I want someone who can't see it to have to know what it is? You know, like
it's super corny sometimes. We when I first brought it up, you know, we had one of our SEO people, I had them writing alt tags for me. And, you know, on one hand, alt tags are somewhere you can kind of get some SEO leverage too a little bit, but you also don't want to only use it for that, because then you're alienating the people that need it, you know? So like what I had her doing was like you said, well, in this case, I'll say it was a plumber. It was a plumber in a blue shirt fixing something. So she would write like Joe's Plumbing, you know, man in a blue shirt fixing it for a happy customer. You know, that's some really, I mean, they're really corny explanations, but they do double duty. They do explain what the photo is so that anyone with accessibility issues know what it is you're showing there. And then also you can throw a little bit of SEO in there as well by dropping the company name and, you know, plumbing,
location,
water heater, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's where it's because in the there's an SEO and Webflow group, and at some point everybody was talking about how using alt tags for SEO, but just from an SEO point of view. And I finally pointed out, it's like the point of the alt tag is actually for people who can't see what the image is. So explain what it is, and then add like in Minneapolis, or whatever, right? But don't make it so that it's useless for the person who actually needs it.
Okay, last question of the night. Yeah.
Sorry, I have to run. But okay. Penny, amazing presentation. I love the shortcuts, mind blown, honestly.
Great. So, excellent.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for coming. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, my pleasure. Hopefully next one is around the same time, so I can wake up a bit casually.
Yeah.
Not
it's next month. It's
something.
Yeah.
It's next month. It's on accessibility. 8 things you can do to your website for accessibility.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, Hamad, I've been to Chennai and it is beautiful.
Oh wow, that's nice.
Yeah, it was a long time ago, but yeah, we were down on the beaches.
Oh, nice. That's nice.
Yeah, there's where there's craft markets, and there's like temples on the beach and stuff.
I mean, our beach is the second longest beach in the world, so there are so many places where you can be.
Wow.
So, but then Chennai is one beach. There's immediately next there's Pondicherry, which was a French settlement, and it's still a union territory with French culture in it. So that's even better.
Yeah.
So next time when you come, just give me a call. We could hang out there.
Okay. All right.
Definitely. That's great. But thanks for having me here, and hopefully see you next in the next meeting.
Yeah, we'll see you later. Right. Thank you.
Bye.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Good night.
All right, here's the last question, and it'll be quick. I've got how long it sounds like doing things in client first is a little quicker, or should hopefully be quicker, because you can just and you get everything laid out. My question, let's say you had a website, how long do you think it takes you to build a website? And I'm not talking, we're not building, we're building a little, little brochure site that's got 15 pages on it. Out of curiosity, how long do you think it'd take you?
I don't know, it probably takes me way too long.
Is that a month? Is that, and I suppose it depends on are you a month, 30 days, that's very different than.
Well, I don't know. Now that I'm starting to use client first, I could imagine that it won't take as long as it used to when I was, plus I also really bad. I sort of like design in Webflow as opposed to working from a design. So
yeah.
So that's part of the question. Do you mean how long?
Let's say you got a design.
Build, if you get a design and all the assets are ready and you're just building from there
together.
Yeah. So let me give you a better example. For my day job, we have to rebuild. Can you guys, am I still showing my screen?
You're still sharing?
So I have to rebuild this site, and it's not huge by any means, but we're going to rebuild this site. It's using CMS. We've got everyone's got their own page. There's enough going on here that it's going to take some time. But what I'm curious about is and you obviously haven't seen this whole site, but for Lenker, let's say someone hired Lenker and you had the designs and you had it was all laid out. You knew what all the pages were going to be. Is that something that Lenker needs a month? Once we have the designs, it takes about a month to turn around the site and do all the QA and all that stuff? Or is it no, this will take, we can generally turn around a site in a week?
So are you asking the project manager or the person who has to build it?
I'm asking it all three of you.
Because ideally, if I was shown this by Rachael and she's like, we're taking this on, I would be like, I want a month to build this. Now, realistically, I'd probably be given 2 weeks to build it.
Okay.
And that's not unreasonable. However, when you have 15 other clients that you have to work with, it's hard to do that.
So let's say it was you just start, because I'm gonna have to rebuild this.
Mhm.
And I originally was like, I want 2 full weeks. And that it started out like, yeah, we can do that. And then it's turned into it's turned into like it's gonna be probably the kind of thing where they're like, all right, it's Wednesday, can we have it by Friday? It'll be that kind of thing. And I'm just kind of curious how long you guys think it would take.
From my non-building perspective, I would say if you have nothing else on your plate, you can make it in 2 weeks, 1 week for build, 1 week for everything else, if nothing goes wrong. And the reason that a month is the best thing is because it often would run into 3, as long as if there are any complications, and you need to make sure that in case that complication is slightly unprecedentedly large, then it would be like the 4. If you had nothing else to work on, that's like a really safe amount of time. But I think you could do it in the 2 weeks, but then you wouldn't be leaving yourself much room for error.
I always try to push under promise and over deliver. If you tell them 4 weeks and you happen to get it done in 3, you look amazing. If you tell them 2 weeks and it takes you 3, they get pissed off, So, something like this. I mean, we built the Sapien website in 21 hours straight, but that's one of those, Sapien.network. I don't even want to get started with that one, but we were approached, what was it, Monday afternoon, told that we needed to have this built and launched by 9 a.m. the next morning. And Monday was spent, the majority of Monday during the morning and the afternoon was spent with the designer coming up with the design.
But you hadn't even designed it.
Nope. And I started building it. I started at like 2 o'clock and worked through, and we launched it live at 9 a.m.
Oh my God.
It was a chore, but we did it. Yeah. But
let's look at the site.
It was interesting. But yeah, me and the 2 designers were up and working 21 hours straight.
And I hope there was a humongous rush charge added to the bill.
You would think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
My old boss at my old company said, he said this thing that I thought was really interesting. He said, what you eat depends on how hungry you are. And sometimes when you're doing a website, I look at it, like, hey, great job, I'm glad you guys did it, but you had maybe starving. Yeah, absolutely.
But yes, like, normally I would have wanted a few weeks to build this, but they're like, we need it in a day. So we busted our butts and we did it. But we were solely focused hard on this, and whatever. A site with 15 pages. I mean, that's not a little. I mean, that's if I were to send a 15-page site like what you were showing off to a freelancer, I would ask for it back in 2 weeks, but I wouldn't be shocked if they were like, no, it needs 3.
I guess, some is like how consistent are the pages, right? I mean,
that's true.
If you've got all the content, right, and if that's not an issue, right? If the pages, because the pages can actually be done in a CMS.
Yeah,
right?
they can be CMS populated.
Yeah. So it's like if the layout of the pages is the same, right? And then you can just stick those in your menu as as CMS items in your menu. That kind of works nicely. Then you're kind of eliminating some of that layout work.
I was working on a project for a friend, and that CMS in the menu, I just figured that out to populate the drop downs with the CMS for those pages. I just figured that out. And I'm like, this is amazing. This is so much better.
Yeah, because I mean the CMS that I used to work with, the whole thing was built on the database, right? So there were no individual pages. You know, if you wanted to, you created a template for an individual page, right? But otherwise you created a template for your, you know, your standard page layout. And then every page was just based on that or some variation of it, right? Yeah. Yeah, it makes it way, way easier.
Yeah.
So
if you got like a lot of service pages that are going to be the same layout, you could build that one page and populate 10 pages.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be, you know, and I mean, it looks like when you've got all those other pages in the menu, I would expect that they're
primarily the same.
CMS, they're CMS essentially, right? I mean, they're.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing is actually, I'd love to do that. Those weren't. I run into sometimes with CMS pages where it's like, no, but on this page, we don't have testimonials. We have, you know, and it's like, you can do stuff where it's like, okay, hide and show, but like you eventually, you start running into like, okay, I know we have 2 buttons, but now we need 3 for this one page, and the labels on the other 2, we need to change those. And so then you're like, oh man, now I've got to go into my settings. I've got to create new fields so that we can like label stuff. And that has been my, if it's a simple page, I think it's easier to, I think it's more doable to do like a full page on CMS. As things get bigger, I've run into situations where it's like, oh, these pages are just, they look really similar, but over the totality of all the different variations, there's now like 30 different things. And so to create a page, you're like, label for this, you know, oh, this could be a file, or this one actually might be a link. And so you have to, you know, it's just, I don't know, maybe people are better than I am and they just know how to do it.
I mean, you could make you can make your template with like all of those. I mean, you know, obviously I know you mentioned conditional visibility. If this page has a link, but it's not set, don't even show it. So you could make your template with all of those things in it, and then, you know, only show stuff when something is set in that field. Exactly. You know, yeah, you're going to end up with a lot of fields in there probably, but
yeah, but that might be worth the trade-off.
Yeah,
hey, sure. And there's probably not going to be like 50 fields, right? It might be 1 or 2 that you hide, right? I mean, because the guy, I did one because I remember coming across this, you know, creating 2 templates within a page, right? So that I had a single page, but I could decide if if it's this kind of thing, then show it in this area, and otherwise there's this other part that's just hidden, and it was all in the one page, and I didn't have to create multiple templates.
Yeah. Especially too when you're like, well, we've got blog items, but sometimes our blogs are going to be like this, and other times our blogs are going to be like that. And you're like, okay, am I going to create 2 CMS collections and then like merge them together, and then if they want to fill out this type, they fill it in here, you know? And it's like, yeah, just no, here's your blogs, tick this box if you want this layout, tick this other box if you want this other layout.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, awesome. Cool. You guys are the best. Penny, brava.
Yeah, great.
Thanks. Thanks. Considering yesterday I was like, all right, how does this work?
Yeah, no, it was great. There were a few other light bulb moments of it. Oh, everything starts with component. Cool. Yep, that helps. Oh, you know, so
if you want real quick, I could show you. I found the example of that keyboard navigation thing.
Oh yeah, it'd be great.
So this was the site we had it on, and the problem I was finding was that, you know, our navigation is this, you know, that it's the main navigation no matter what desktop you're on. And the problem was I couldn't get it to tab to that to activate it. So I'm like, people with accessibility issues aren't going to be able to access the navigation. And so after doing a whole lot of research and a lot of searching and talking to people in Discord and whatnot, you need to add a custom attribute of a tab index. So giving it a tab index tells it basically where it falls in the tab order of things, so that when you're in there and you start tabbing, it'll actually, get to it, and somewhere in there it was working before, but you can actually get to it and activate it with.
Did you have to add a JavaScript library or script anything to add?
Nope. Tab index is just a div attribute, and that just tells it that it's part of the tab flow of things.
Right. So it puts it at a particular point in the tab flow. There's something about that on it. Yeah, there's something about tab index in the client first docs that probably it sounds similar. So.
Yep.
I'm gonna do a video. I'm gonna do a video on No Code Collab about tab index.
Nice. Because when you put a link, they naturally get one in the DOM. They get a tab index, but because this one's being activated by an interaction on a Lottie, it doesn't naturally get a link, tab index.
Right?
Yeah,
right.
It doesn't get. So you have to tell it to do that.
So if you set that to 1, is that the first thing?
I think that is
0. I think client first said something about 0. Let me just go there. Here it says tab index equals 0 makes the element focusable with keyboard navigation. Tab index equals X being a number. Then you're stating the order when this element should be focused.
Yeah.
So by setting it to 10, it was like the 10th item in the navigation list.
Yep, that sounds right.
And so if you set that to 0, did that come up first?
0 makes it focusable.
So. I think it puts it in the order of everything else. So where it would show up like in the DOM, let's find out here. I don't think the Webflow previewer is the best place to test that. So first tab, second. So it came up in the third. So there's something in here.
Okay, so try 1. Go back and try 1, because maybe it was like, oh, at 0, I'm gonna just put it in the flow in the I
think that's what it does. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is 1, which is the home logo.
Yep.
2 is the phone number link. 3, I'm not sure is that. Okay, so for some reason,
your estimate shows up after
that
you
one
scroll
comes
down.
3. So then the fourth one in this case, the fourth one ends up being that, and then you hit enter to activate it. And
so if you go back to Webflow and update that to 1,
theoretically, it should be the first one to select, I would think. Boy, I hope they make this faster.
Yeah.
I've noticed mine is really slowing down. Like it'll take a minute.
Yeah, it can take a good while. So now, yep. First tab puts it right there.
Nice.
And then these all, because they're links, have tabs as well.
They do. I was just noticing though, it doesn't go. Oh, it does go right to them now. So yeah, that worked. Just how it should there.
Cool.
So yeah, that's so you do something weird with your menu, and you may make yourself unnavigable by keyboards, which can be a problem for some people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's great. Awesome. Penny, I think you're an hour later than us, so you are really burning midnight oil.
I know. I was actually thinking I should have a glass of wine sitting here for after I was done, and it's like it's all the way downstairs.
Well, thank you so much. You were great.
Yeah,
Dustin, can't wait for your accessibility speech next month. Otherwise we'll see you guys. Well, hey, let's chat with each other in the little hop-in chat tomorrow during Trevor Noah.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
kind of a fun one.
Cool. It's like tomorrow I get to just focus on the no code conf instead of trying to build a presentation.
There you go.
Yeah, that's right. All righty. Well, have a good night, everyone.
Cool.
Yep.
All right.
See you guys.
See you around.
See ya.
Take care. Thanks for having me.